Hello Mayhem Makers, I'm Mindy with Quilting Mayhem. Welcome back to the Alchemy Sew Along. This time I'm going to show you just my basic stitching method that I use for all my English paper piecing. I just do a whip stitch, so I know there's other stitches out there. There's ladder stitches, flat back, there's all kinds. Feel free to go research them, test them out, see what works for you. For me, this is my quickest, easiest stitch to just get it done. It's pretty mindless, so it makes it simple to do, you know, in front of the TV, on the road, all that kind of stuff. So just keep this in mind. Now, it's month 1, so you're now looking at, you know, your pattern and all this information going, oh my gosh, how do I do this? So keep it simple. A lot of this design is essentially, if you can just look at it as rows, there's even kind of rows in it, I would kind of stick with that method, but really do what's comfortable to you. If like the center one, if you want to do kind of this flower in the middle, work your way out, whatever's comfortable. But for your first time around, if you're new, I would kind of stick with a row method. And what you're going to end up doing is just kind of taking your hexes and putting them together like this. You're just going to do simple stitching, going from one end to the other and going together, and then you will eventually start, you know, piecing them together like this, so that you end up getting pieces like this. So this is kind of the work in progress. Is this not just beautiful? I love this guy. All right. And this, I have to give a shout out to one of our employees, Kim. She's actually helping me do some of the stitching because I don't have that much time to just sit and do handwork. So love Miss Kim. She's helping out. But let's get to the actual stitching. I think I'm going to move this camera a little bit because I want you to see this part. Not necessarily me, right? So basic putting pieces together is just 2 of them right sides together. All right. And we're just making sure the ends match. Now these are pretty small. You may not need like a wonder clip, but a lot of times I will clip it just so it doesn't shift as I go. You know, it keeps things nice and straight. Now your needles, I have one parked right here and already threaded because threading needles is getting a little more complicated the older I get. So I made sure to plan ahead. So simple quilter's knot. I taught this weekend and I love it. It's simple, but not everybody knows how to do it. Take your needle, take the tail of your thread, right? Make sure you don't do too long of thread or you'll get a lot of knots as you go, or start using some things like thread gloss, thread wax, those kinds of things. All right, so we're going to take that tail and I'm pinching it here. All right, so this hand has everything. I'm going to wrap it. And this was the hardest part to show. I kind of hold it in my hand down here, so the thread's being held down here so that I can pinch that wrap. So I've got it all kind of bunched up on itself and I pinch it. All right, I'm going to push the bottom up a little bit so I can get a grip over here, and then I just pull all the way to the end. Just keep going until a knot will form. I'm sure you can't see that bad boy, but oh, there we go. It's got a little baby knot in there. You don't necessarily need to do a knot, you would have to leave a tail. I like having a knot because it makes it more secure. Now, I do kind of go up, let's see if I can even do this, up under the fabric a little bit, so that knot's going to hide. So I'm kind of underneath this flap here, and then my needle, I'm going to try to make it come out the corner. This is the hardest thing to show on a video, I'm telling you. All right, so needle's going to kind of be under the flap. It's going to come out this point. The accuracy of this really isn't going to matter a whole lot, because in the end, it's all going to be inside that quilt. All right, and I will trim that tail. It doesn't need to be quite so aggressive. All right, I stitch towards myself, so I go from back to front, and I'm just going to grab a couple threads. So let's see if that camera will even try to focus on there. So it's really just a minute amount of threads on both the back side and the front side, both pieces, okay? And then just pull. I do a little tug to it. I want it to be nice and tight. And I'm just going to keep going back to front, couple stitches, right? just a little bit, and I'm just skimming right across the top. I'm avoiding that paper. I'm avoiding trying to stick through it, and I'm trying not to take big chunks. All right, so we're just doing little tiny bits of thread on each side, straight across, and then we're traveling diagonally across the top, just little bits, like 1/16 of an inch. I can't give you an accurate measurement because I just wing it. Move that clip when it gets in my way because I got big fat fingers, and I'm just little bits. This is where potentially, if you're like me, where eyesight is starting to get a little tired, starts to fail you, you may want like a magnifying glass or your readers, those kinds of things. So we're just going to keep, and it will get better as you go. So don't look at your first couple stitches and be like, oh my God, this is terrible, and chuck it in the trash and never touch it again, okay? Stop judging yourself that hard. It doesn't have to be super pretty. Once this quilt is quilted, you're not going to care. All right, so we're just going to keep traveling across to the end. Now, if I was doing, say, all the hexies around, I could add on another piece, and I'll show you what I mean. So, and then I generally, when I get to the end, I'll do a couple extra stitches before I do a little knot. But we're going to talk about if I was traveling. So let's say I had this guy and I was going to add another one and do it all the way around. This is where I would then put this right side together, and then I would start at this corner and keep stitching and keep going all the way around, because I like to use as much of my thread as possible before not doing a knot, before tying off, because it's more secure that way than having starts and stops and starts and stops. So I would just keep stitching. But because we're doing in a row method, you just need A to B, because then you're going to come do B to C. All right. So in this case, we are going to knot. So I did a couple little stitches just essentially right on top of each other, and then I come through and just do like another stitch, but I'm going to get into that loop. So I'm going to just loop back through it to make a knot. Okay. If you guys need to come see me and see this in person or do a video chat with me, to do it, you know, together in person, I completely understand. Please reach out to me and be like, I need more. I need in-person visual, or, you know, video if you're not local, those kinds of things. But otherwise, this is how it looks. The back side. It's not the prettiest thing. You can see those stitches, but in the end, they all kind of start to hide on each other. Like I said, once it's quilted, it's not going to matter. All right. So that's all you're going to do is start laying your pieces out per the diagram, start sewing your sections, and then you'll sew them together. So when you go to sew them together, do not be afraid to like bend papers. You're going to have to be aggressive with them. They can handle it. So say I want to get this piece in here. We're going to start out the same, and we're just going to do this kind of quick. So you generally would not hide it in there. And because I'm just doing a demo, we'll try to be quick, get to that center so I can show you what you need to do. So right sides are together. I'm just going right to left. It doesn't matter though if you want to go right to left, left or right, until you get to these where you're trying to get two sides in one full stitch or one full thread. You just need to make sure you start either, like if you're trying to do this Y, you can either start at this end and go all the way to here, or start at this end and go all the way there. So some of it doesn't matter. I could have turned it around. I could have had it facing the opposite direction. None of that will matter in the end. So don't stress about being super exact to how I'm doing it, because even I change up on myself. I'll be like, oh, I want to turn this around and go this way. Don't ask me why. That's just how my brain works. So I get to this corner, I'm going to do a couple stitches, because especially in the corners they get a lot of tugging, a lot of pulling. So I like to secure them. So right in this middle, I'm just doing a couple here. All right. And then what's going to happen, because now, see, this guy's kind of, we want these two to connect. So now this yellow one, it's just going to fold right in half. All right. And this is where a lot of times I definitely will use a clip, because I want to make sure that this point is matching. I want to make sure it's not offset by anything. So this is where I kind of play with it, adjust it. And this poor guy, see, he's all bent up, and that's okay, because you may not reuse the papers, or if you're reusing the papers, and if you're starting to get a twist, just let your thread ease up. They'll flatten back out. You can iron them, the hot dry iron. And then I'm just going to come right in this corner. I'm going to do 2 little tacking stitches here, and I'm going to treat it just like it was 2 pieces all by themselves, and I'm just going to keep on stitching till I get to that other end. So I'm going to make sure I actually look at what I'm trying to stitch and get the fabric. It's that kind of morning. All right, so same thing, just a couple of threads of the fabric, top and bottom, just going back to front. As you can tell, it starts to get easier the more warmed up you get, and just keep going. So we're just stitching along. Now the bigger distance you go between your stitches, the more of a gap you potentially will have, and that's why I do fairly tiny, especially since these are tiny. I don't want them coming apart, so that's why I say it's really about a 1/16. It's not much space between stitches, because I don't want it just pulling all apart. All right, and I get to the end, do a couple stitches, and if you take too big of chunks of fabric as you go, you will really start to notice it in your stitching. So that's why you're trying to do just a little bit. All right, come to the end. I've made a little loop. Just going to pull that needle through it, knot it off, snip it, park that needle. Make yourself a lanyard like this. It does wonders, because it holds my clips, it has my little needle just parked in there, my scissors, everything's right where I need it. So there's 3 together. Okay, that fabric, you know, or that paper, you can't tell really that it got manhandled. It'll flatten back out. Okay, so that's how you do those little Y joins. So as you start doing your rows, that's what you'll need to do, is you'll start at one end and you're just going to kind of keep zigzagging and bending the fabric as you go to get those joins together. So hope this helps you get through month 1. That's all you're doing. Just start getting them sewn together, okay guys? If you have any questions, please reach out to me. Let me know. I'll help you out, especially this part. You know, if this Y join really gives you grief, just let me know. I'll walk you through it, okay guys? I hope you have a lovely day and keep on stitching.